Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name's Dychronic here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 favorite PvP primaries in Destiny 2. And of course, as always, this is a subjective opinion based on how I like to play in PvP and the opinion of my buddy Zoomzy, who helped create the spreadsheet as well as get the gameplay you can see on screen. Link to his Twitch in the description down below. And of course, as always, I have made a spreadsheet for this video that you'll be seeing throughout this video. If you want to get your hands on it, it's fully public at my Discord server, link in the description down below, on the channel #Spreadsheet Stocks. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the spreadsheets. And as you can see on screen right now, this is my spreadsheet. Many of you guys know it, you love it. Dark theme, color-coded pictures, lots of information about Catalyst, my recommendations for legendary weapons, for all of the weapons I was considering, as well as my top 10 honorable mentions and best in class. Now, if you just want to know what my top 10 are, obviously you can go to the spreadsheet, or you can see on screen right now, but obviously the reasons why they are where they are is going to be very important as the meta changes, as the artifact changes. Things will move around, and there's a good reason why. So instead of just going through the top 10, we're going to go through each of the main categories and talk about what's the best in that category and why, or why it's not performing well. In the first major category, we have the bows, and pretty much the same reason in PvE. They have a lot of range, but you don't need that much range, and it's somewhat difficult to use. Keeping in mind, in PvP, in almost every map, there's almost always a way to approach from a closer angle, so having this much range is not a big advantage. For the most part, bows are usually used in a wombo combo, where you shoot somebody with a bow shot, get a headshot, do most of their health, and quickly swap to a 120 hand cannon, for example. As long as you have the ability to very quickly swap with something like Quick Draw or Fitting Aspects or Lucky Pants, the ability to swap very quickly, you can kind of do this. However, you do lose an opportunity to use special weapons in the higher level play. It's not really going to fly. Next up, I wanted to talk about Vex Mythoclast. From our experience, Vex Mythoclast is not really that good. It's more like a 360 auto rifle, which is not really doing that well, and a linear fusion rifle, which is also not really doing that well. Again, kind of like PvE, it's more of a jack of all trades and not really a master of anything. And honestly, the jack of all trades that it is not very good anyways. After that, we have the Fighting Lion, the only grenade launcher. Just like the bows, it's mostly used in a wombo combo with a lot more ammo than a special ammo grenade launcher, but I generally prefer specials because it's not that hard to get special ammo, and you do more damage with it, making the wombo combo a lot more consistent. Up next, let's talk about these sidearms. Now, these sidearms are actually not a bad set of weapons. They're just kind of a little bit behind a lot of the other items. First up, I wanted to talk about the Cryosthesia, the new sidearm that came out with the season pass and everybody was clamoring about. But in the end, you are required to get a kill to freeze an enemy for just a short period of time. It's nowhere near as powerful as the rest of these stasis subclasses, and again, it does require a kill. And in the end, it's not really that great. When it comes to the other sidearms, my personal pick for best in class is going to be Traveler's Chosen. The ability to get ×3 stacks, so 30% of all your abilities on every kill, works really well with a lot of builds that depend on abilities, especially considering stasis is still strong. Being able to use this with any stasis makes it a lot better. Outside of that, for the legendary versions, we still think that the 3 bursts are going to be the most consistent. Again, not only for their kills per clip, their control even in a burst, and even on controller, still works quite well, and also has less bloom than the other sidearm options. Whereas you're firing, that reticle expands, makes it a lot harder to hit. For some reason, these burst options still work really well. However, we have found that the SMGs are doing better than the sidearms in PvP. Up next, we have the auto rifles. Kind of all over the place in the history of Destiny 2, starting with the Uriel's Gift era in the beginning of the game. We also had the Gnawing Hunger era back in Arrivals, the longest season ever, and since then, I honestly still think that they're a viable option for a lot of people. Even though that, yes, they take technically 1 more bullet for the optimal time to kill and 1 more for the average time to kill, that's still not that significant, especially in the middle and below average play. The 600 RPMs still have great damage fall off, great control, great magazine size, availability, perk options, pretty much across the board for Gnawing Hunger, Summoner, Monte Carlo, Suros, and Hardlight. The problem with it before is that it had a better time to kill on average as compared to all of the other things around it with a similar range, and it was easy to use. Now it's slightly behind and still easy to use. Oh, and I guess, you know, Hardlight having infinite range was pretty cool as well, or at least it used to. Beyond that, I wanted to give a special shout out to Suros Regime. It actually has a pretty insane time to kill, especially if you're using something like Actium War Rig, which makes it so you can extend that high fire rate a little bit longer. And the other one is going to be Monte Carlo, which actually works quite well with a lot of builds considering you just have to get damage with it in order to get your melee. And again, stasis is really good, so if you just want to keep sending out stasis melees and you keep on getting kills with this weapon, it's very easy to continue that. Up next, we have the submachine guns. And out of all of these submachine guns, I would say that these 750s are our favorite. And we have some pretty good reasoning for that. And I know a lot of people are going to be screaming about Shairo's Wrath. I have some pretty good rationale. And if you've seen the Astrocross video where he went over SMGs, I'm going to repeat a lot of the stuff that he said there. First of all, the 900 RPM adaptive and lightweights have the best optimal time to kill. They fire the fastest and they have the most difficulty of control. However, the 750 aggressives have the best average time to kill when it comes to their combination of range stickiness and their fire rate and their control. They do slightly better than the 900s when it comes to the average. And finally, we have the precision frames, which actually have the worst of both average and optimal, but they have the highest range. And in case you don't know, range actually has a lot of stuff going on. It not only increases the distance you can do the maximum damage, it increases the distance of the damage fall off, and it increases the magnetism and stickiness of your aim on targets. And with the introduction of Shairo's Wrath, which is kind of a power creep weapon that can get nearly maxed out range, I think it's like 98 range with the perfect perks, it also has really good perks and really good stats. However, we still find the 750s to be on average the most comfortable and the most effective. And this season, we got even a new one, Borrowed Time. If you can get a good roll, even though it's a hugely diluted pool, you can get a pretty good energy version, as Ikelos didn't have the best possible perks. It's a good energy alternative. And the last thing I want to say about submachine guns, which is actually quite important, is that our current meta is even more shotgun based than it ever has been before. Where I imagine Bungie was hoping to nerf shotguns by changing quick draw, it actually nerfed snipers more and forced people to be holding their shotguns out more often, meaning that they're probably going to want to rush you even more. Whereas before, you not only swapped faster with quick draw, you also aim down sights faster, which was a big thing for snipers. And submachine guns are the perfect counter. If you can keep them outside of that range, you have great DPS, so the follow-up shots are not going to do enough. Up in the next major category, we have the pulse rifles, an excellent use weapon for pretty much everything. You can use it anywhere from short range to long range. I often consider it to be the upper bound of the range you're ever going to need in both PvP and PvE, and generally it's also an easy weapon type to use and understand for newer players, while also being very good at zoning in the highest level play. On top of also having a pretty decent aim assistance cone, where it's much better than that of scout rifles, while again still being the highest range you're ever going to need. However, many people might find pulse rifles quite boring, as they're more of a defensive tool, sticking around cover, not rushing forward as much, but again, for newer players, that fits a lot better. And when it comes to the legendary choice for the archetypes, we really like the adaptive 390s. First of all, excellent stats across the board: handling, stability, range, perk options, availability, kinetic and energy options. And even though you are forced most of the time to have a minimum 3 bursts for optimal kill, it is a lot more comfortable. Whereas something like the 340s, even though you can technically get a 2 burst, making the optimal time to kill much better, on average is not going to be doing better if you miss parts of bursts, which is very easy considering its stability issues and its flinch. And for the other side of things, for the 450s, the 3 burst, the 4 burst, and the 540s, which I find to compete a lot more in the hand cannon zone, which is obviously dominated by the hand cannons. Even with the grid skipper this season, which is again another power creep kind of weapon, probably the best 540 we've ever had, I still don't think it's enough to throw over submachine guns, auto rifles, and of course hand cannons. And the last one I'll mention is No Time to Explain, which actually solves a lot of the issues we have with the 340s, having much better handling, great sights, great stability, great range, a damage perk in the time slip thing, which also helps you know where enemies are. Just overall the best possible version of a 340 you could ever have. So not only does it have that perfect 2 burst high optimal play stuff, it's also a lot easier to use and a lot quicker, and definitely deserving of 3rd place. It's excellent. And right here in the middle of the video, just wanted to take a break to put some cute animals on screen and just say thank you for watching the video. I know a lot of people will probably skip around this video, just look for the top 10, or even just look at number 1 and 2. I just wanted to say thank you for watching the whole thing. And of course, I also wanted to thank my patrons on Patreon. Truly, without their help, I wouldn't be able to make the spreadsheets you see throughout this video, because the fact is they take 10 to 20 hours every single week, and I don't make any money from them. And without their support, I'd have to get a part-time job, which means I wouldn't be able to take the time to make the spreadsheets. And if you like the spreadsheets, please consider checking out my Patreon, link in the description down below, to help these these spreadsheets keep going. Moving on, let's go ahead and take a look at the scout rifles. Now, I would say outside of the Dead Man's Tale, the scout rifles are not really doing that well in the current meta. Just like with the bows, having a very, very long range, more than a 390 pulse rifle, is not a big advantage when most people can approach from a closer angle. And when it comes to the different options, we really like the 200 RPM lightweights, and I'll also include the Mida multi-tool in there as well. For the legendary options, we have kinetic and energy options, great availability, great perks, great stability, good comfortability, not too slow, not too fast. And for the Mida multi-tool pick, it has 100 aim assistance, great recoil pattern, you can see your radar while aiming down sights, and they actually changed the catalyst from having the outlaw, which felt useless, to no distraction, so it's even better than it has been before. On the flip side of things, we have the Dead Man's Tale, which is more like a scout rifle 120 hand cannon hybrid than anything before, with a little bit of last word in there as well. So firstly, being that it's a 120 RPM means that its damage is very close to that of a 120 hand cannon, on top of the fact that it can get extra damage as you get headshots and play that little Western theme whenever you get 5 in a quick amount of time, which is obviously the best part, the Western theme. Pretty much the best part. And on top of that, the catalyst makes it so whenever you're blind firing, you fire faster. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 RPM to 180 RPM, making it a lot better use at closer range, where scout rifles very much suffer at close range because of that aim assistance cone. And did I mention that it also has random perks, meaning that you can perfectly build this weapon exactly the way you want it. And the last thing I will say about this weapon is that it does seem to be better on mouse and keyboard. It seemed like something to be better on controller, just like last word, but it does seem to lean more towards mouse and keyboard, keeping in mind that I use a controller while playing on PC, and so does Zoomzy and Diz, my primary sources for PvP. And finally, at the best weapon type in pretty much the entire game, we have the hand cannons. And as a staple of Destiny 2, this makes sense. However, it's even more slots than last time. 6 out of the 10 top 10 slots are hand cannons. However, hand cannons are not for everybody. It is a higher skill floor, higher skill ceiling type of weapon, but obviously hand cannons, and the game has been out for a very long time, you probably have had a lot of time to get used to it. And truly, compared to other things within their range, within their area of effect, they are doing the best optimal time to kill, the best at peak shooting around cover, and of course with the most viable options. And this section is obviously going to take the longest because there's just so many incredible options. First up, let's talk about the Crimson, a weapon that's always going in and out of the top 10 right at the edge, and this season it did find its way into the top 10 with the ability to heal yourself on kills and get ammo back in the magazine from precision kills, and the catalyst giving you nearly maxed out range, if not maxed out. Now, the one thing I would say that does actually make this weapon not as viable as some of the other ones, and it does sometimes kick it out, is that it's not really that great at peak shooting, and its bloom is a little difficult to handle. So at range, even though it has higher range, doesn't really match up with a lot of the other hand cannons. Following that, let's talk about the Sunshot, the only 150 RPM hand cannon in the game, with technically the best optimal time to kill of any of the hand cannons outside of the last word, while also having explosive payload, which flinches targets and hits many targets, making it a lot easier to fight enemies. However, the biggest downside to this is that there's a lot of flash on this weapon, a lot more than other explosive payload weapons, making you more likely to go for body shots and ruin that 3-shot optimal time to kill, forcing you into a 4-shot body shot, which is actually not bad, making it a lot easier to actually get those kind of kills. After that, we have the last word, which actually got a pretty big buff this season, considering that hipfire grip got buffed a pretty significant amount, and considering that most of the time you're blind firing with this weapon anyways, on top of, again, there being a lot more shotguns, this is a perfect weapon at a perfect range to deal with those. And as I said before, this is more of a controller use weapon. Blind firing with this is just stickiness and aim assistance and magnetism, just seems to work better with controllers, but even on mouse and keyboard you'd probably find some good efficacy. Following that, we have most of the 140 hand cannons. Now the 140 hand cannons, just like with PvE, are a nice little middle zone for control, for handling, for range, for fire rate, availability, perk options across the board. And I say across the board a lot because I like saying across the board. And I've actually grouped a lot of hand cannons in at number 5, even exotic hand cannons like Hawkmoon, Lumina, Thorm. And when it comes to the different options, Fatebringer, Hawkmoon, and Palindrome are gonna be doing the best as far as the stat distribution, the total stats on a lot of these things, availability, kinetic, and energy slots, and obviously Hawkmoon having random rolls, can get things like rangefinder or surplus, are just incredible options. Following that, at number 4, we have Ace of Spades. Even though it is a 140 hand cannons, we have set it as a separate item because it's just such a well-built hand cannon and so much better than the other 140s. First of all, it has the highest range of any 140 by quite a significant margin, margin and is closer to the range of 120s. Secondly, it has like 2 perks that are actually 4 perks. Being able to see your radar while aiming down sights, the Memento Mori kill clip, but actually better because it lasts longer, and Firefly, Outlaw plus Dragonfly, on top of, again, having a 100 recoil pattern, making it one of the easiest hand cannons in the game to use. The one downside I would say with it is going to be its handling, so if you get dexterity with it, it's going to be a lot better. And finally, we have the 120 RPM hand cannons. Obviously the one that got the biggest nerf with the range disadvantage nerf that we got this season, but even then, it's still got great range, it's got great stickiness at range, and we have great options for kinetic and energy. Everybody knows and loves Igneous and Bottom Dollar for your energy. True Prophecy and Steady Hand are really good for kinetic slot, and we still feel that Sturm is such an incredible option, considering how easy it is to get, and relatively easy it is to get the Catalyst to max out that range, on top of having exotic tier stats to it, makes it such an incredible option. Now obviously it doesn't have a damage perk to get that optimal 2-shot kill as easy, but there are just so many options these days like high energy fire or some type of special mod or empowering well or that stasis damage mod. It's just not that hard anymore. And of course, if you had any questions about the items on my list, or if you had a weapon that you think I may have underrated or completely forgotten about, let me know in the comments down below so that I can make this the best weapon list possible. But of course, please let me know why. And furthermore, I'd also like to say thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Without their help, I really wouldn't be able to make these kind of videos. Specifically, I want to give a big thank you to Mary Budu, Mom Dad, Charles Williams, Dr. Strange, Joe Smith, Manik, Nettle Hopkins, Tobacco Noise, Cesonera, Ray Machono, You Panther, Cole Sherm, Casey Reagan, and Badgie, all of their support on Patreon. And of course, I want to say thank you for watching the video. My name is Dychronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.